Shalom, Kalayim La, Abanawa, Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yashai, Ba'ashim Kahakudash, Kabad Lahaz Aquanim, Shaga Masa, Wahab Bayat, Shad Dawada, Wahab Bakariam. Giving all praise, honor, and glory to our Father Yahweh, who the world ignorantly calls God, in the name of his only begotten Son Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Also giving double honors, that's well deserved, to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone, that indeed teach well, dwelling in the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yashai, Hukakodash, alright, and teaching men and sounding like doctrine to do so as well. And giving peace-loving salutations to Bayat Shad Dawada, which is the house of David, Wahab Bakariam, and the elect that indeed risen here in these last days, as spoken of in the scriptures. What you see on the screen is something to the effect of what I'm going to label this video, something to the effect of the 12 tribes sign and Ephraim, alright, because there's a lot of controversy about this sign that you see here, alright, the 12 tribes of Israel, and the indicator on who the children of Israel is here today, man. Alright, you see Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Ephraim, Manasseh, Simeon, Zebulun, Gad, Reuben, Asher, Issachar, Naphtali. All of these are connected to the people that will prophesy to have bywords here in these last days, such as blacks, West Indians, Haitians, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans, alright, Guatemalans, American Indians, Seminole Indians, Colombians, Mexicans, Argentinians. All these are bywords, man. These is not words that were names that were given unto you through the Heavenly Father. All right, every nation on the planet has a biblical name that the Lord gave unto them, man. So we are in these last days where everybody is being identified, not only the children of Israel, but the other nations as well. All right, when we talk about the so-called Chinese, all right, the the Moabites, all right, their father, the progenitor being Moab, all right, the so-called Japanese, their father being Ammon, or Benamin, all right, if I'm not mistaken or mispronouncing it, which are indeed the Ammonites, as today, man, we would call them the Japanese, all right, the descendants of Ammon. And also along with the Ishmaelites, so-called Arabs, all right, we have we can't forget about the Edomites, the so-called white man, Europeans, all right. All of these are names that they call themselves today, but are not the names that the Lord refers to them as. But in this lesson, we're gonna be speaking of the children of Israel, and who are they today, man? And is this 12 tribe sign, is this biblical prophecy? Is this something that was spoken of in the scriptures that in the last days were going to be happening, and somebody was going to, or the prophets of the last days were going to be prophesying with a sign? Or did somebody just come up with this sign and say, hey, this is who I think the people are, man? All right? So the first scripture I want to touch on, just to answer that question here, is Ezekiel 37 and 15. Because indeed, the 12 tribe sign was biblical prophecy. It says here, the word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions, and take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for the house of Israel his companions. All right, and when we get into that word stick, it goes into plank, piece of wood, things to that nature. Actually, don't count on me. I'll find it right here. This is it's actually here, Strong's 6085. But to get it real quick, this is Ezekiel 37 and 16. It says, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, all right, Strong's 860-86. As you look at it, it says tree, wood, timber, stalk, plank, stalk, stick, gallows. B, trees, tree. Or slack it. A, tree, trees. B, wood, pieces of wood, gallows, firewood, cedar wood, woody flax. All right. What I like to focus on here is plank, because indeed the signs, you see a lot of men on the highways and byways with the signs of the 12 tribes chart, and granted, some men use different materials now in these days, but the original material was wood. They took a piece of wood and they were likened onto a plank, and they cut it in the middle so that it stood upright. And they did as Ezekiel prophesied that would happen. They wrote on it for the line of Judah, which is Benjamin, Levi, and Benjamin, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and indeed the rest of the house of Israel, which is the northern tribe, which is the house of Ephraim, as Ezekiel prophesied. And indeed, they were put together on one stick, as Ezekiel prophesied here in the 17th verse. It says, and join them one to another into one stick, that they shall become one in thine hand. And that's what happened, man. They became one. They became a symbol of one tribe, which is the 12 tribes of Israel, of the one nation, which is the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, the key indicator onto who these people are this day today, here in these last days. All right, so indeed the 12 tribes chart is an indicator and is a prophecy of what should be happening in these last days. So it wasn't going to be talking about bringing only Ephraim or only the so-called African Americans on the sign. All right, but write it for all of the tribes. And how do we know? How can we prove that Ephraim and the Cubans and the Manasseh, Simeon, so-called Dominicans? How do we know that these are Israelites? Well, hey, let's get in it. There's a few key things that I don't want to touch on here. All right, now this is actually before I get this, so a couple things I googled, right? Because we, so-called Puerto Ricans, they call themselves Boricuas, right? And so there's a few things I googled. Granted, you would need to know a little bit to get past the bones, to know the right things to Google. But if you're knowledgeable, you'll be able to find the truth behind the lies. All right, this is Boricua origin. It says Boricua. Boricua is a local name for a Puerto Rican. The word derives from indigenous name for the island of Puerto Rico, Borican or Boriquin. The Boricuas first inhabited the island, many, many years ago, long before the Spanish came and conquered. Talking about the conquistadors, right? Christopher Columbus and his crew. All right, so that was the name for a Puerto Rican. That's what that's saying. But the truth of the matter is that's what they called the island. They called the island Borica. All right. Now, how do we know that? Before we get to that, it says Taino, because we know that the Tainos were the original names for the so-called Puerto Ricans. They was calling themselves Taino. All right. There's a lot of information here. Main information you got it in titles. All right. Taino language and the Taino Indian tribe. All right. Boricua was the name of Puerto Rico's indigenous Indians the Tainos gave to their island. The term means valiant people. It actually means the valiant ones, the brave ones, the nobles. It's a Hebrew way of saying the noble ones. Now, you can simple ask this question here. Is Boricua a Hebrew word? And it says Boricua is a Hebrew word. All right? And then you go down, it says, people also ask, where did the name Boricua come from? It says, Puerto Ricans often proudly identify themselves as Boricua, formerly also spelled Boriquen, Boriquen, or Boriqueño, derived from the Taino word Boriquen to illustrate the recognition of the island's Taino's heritage, right? But when you get in that word Boricua, Boriquen, or Boricua, right, it's a way of saying the nobles, or the island of the nobles, the place of the valiant ones, right? The land of the brave. Look, it says another thing. Comes from IsraelUnited.org. I don't really want to bring that out. I'm trying to get it from other sources, all right? Another piece of information I want to bring out is because the Tainos natives, which were calling themselves Tainos, which we call today Puerto Ricans, they spoke Arawakan. All right, that word Arawakan is indeed a Hebrew name. All right, that's a Hebrew. There's none other than a Paleo Hebrew. All right, Arawakan, that's Hebrew, man. All right, to know that I'd be lying if I say I knew what that meant. I don't, but that's indeed Hebrew. All right, those have Hebrew characteristics. All right. Now I'm just gonna get something from off this website. It says Ephraim 8. It's Ephraim8tripod.com, and really it's just a man known as Dr. M. K. Serlin, who actually put together his information on what he put together, what he found, and he's wrote this statement. So this is kind of like a blog website. But indeed, the things that he's saying here are indeed, most of it is the truth. All right, so I'm going to read some key points of what he's saying. It's saying Christopher Columbus and the participation of the Jews in early Spanish and Portuguese discoveries by Dr. M. K. Serlin, Mayan chieftain. All writers and travelers agree, moreover, that there were many Jewish types of faith among the Indians and the Aborigines of America. Participation of the Jews, all right, Indians and Israelites. The new publication we will discuss will be a piece of the late 19th century literature by Dr. Meyer Serling, great German historian. All right, so Meyer Serling is a German historian, and this person is taking his discoveries and his information and wrote a summary based upon it, or wrote his information based upon it. All right, and it says, great German historian. His work primarily deals with the contribution of the Jews to the voyage of Christopher Columbus, Prince Henry the Navigator, Vasco da Gama, and other explorers. We will deal primarily with two sections of his book, which dwelt with the topic we are discussing, the Israelitish origins of the Aborigines of the Americas and the Caribbean. The first reference he makes as to this subject's matters was in chapter 6, which he entitled Indians and Israelites. The second reference we find that the appendix, which written in Spanish, was taken from the daily log of a conquistador commander, Colonel Munoz. Both references identify the Indians of the Americas as the lost tribes of Israel. The main focus was the Tainos and the other Iroquois nations, which were the first natives which the Europeans encountered. So he's taking information from an actual conquistador at the time, during his writings, all right, and his references, and then this person's getting information from this German historian by the name of Dr. Meyer Serling, or K. Serling, all right, and as looking at his information, he's going to bring out the information in which these men wrote, which is being hid from the people today. All right, it says several writers have asserted and have displayed much learning in attempting to prove that the Aborigines were the descendants of the Jews. All right, it says Antonio Montesinos, Portuguese clergyman whose piece we'll get into more in depth in another chapter, was convinced that the Peruvians were of Jewish origin. All right, that's talking about the northern tribe, man. That's all that's all talking about here on down. All right, Ephraim, Manasseh, Simeon, Zebulun, Gad, Reuben, Asher, Issachar, Naphtali. This is all. This is what this who are they talking about? The so-called Aborigines of the Americas, when America was so-called discovered by the so-called Europeans who were descendants of Esau, Edomites, the conquistadors, the British, all right, the Portuguese. Well, later on, the British starting at first it was the Spaniards, then the Portuguese, and then later on the British and the French. All right, and where was I at? A 17th Peruvians were of Jewish origin. Roden Gregorio Garcia Luis Lopez, a 17th century linguist, expert, and Archbishop of Quito, and a renowned historian of that era, all maintained the same argument in 1650. Mentioned also was Thomas Thorogood, whose volume we spoke about the previous chapter, and a renowned rabbi from Amsterdam. The Portuguese Jew Manasseh ben Israel, lastly mentioned, was Englishman Lord Kingsborough, who devoted a great part of his vast fortune to the publication of a collection of documents in order to prove the Jewish origins of these Americans. All right, so you had so-called Jews, all right, or the Jews of today, the ones that the Edomites, the Khazars, right, that are pretending to be Jews, even proving that the people that they encountered in this part of the world were the original Israelites, man. You know, the scriptures say, they tongue shall fall upon themselves. This is indeed a beautiful example. All right. It says, Rodin's chief argument in support of his view was the language that the natives spoke. He contends that it had many analogies to the Hebrew. In fact, he called it corrupted Hebrew. Right. You know, Esau got to put his thing in. Hey, really, it was corrupted, but it was more of a pure form than what them devils, them so-called Jews, or the so-called Jewish people, the Khazars, what they were speaking. All right. He maintains that the names Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew, and were the names of rivers and persons derived from the Hebrew language. Their rites and ceremonies, as well as their language forms of the main arguments in favor of his theory of descent. A long list of similar Indian and Mosaical laws is given in this chapter, which other authors such as Thurgood Smith, Morsley, and Badenoch, to name a few, get very much more in depth into. It is curious as to how a subject that was so highly debated in the 16th century throughout the late 19th century in the present day is hardly even brought up, right? Because they don't want Israel to know that you Israelites, man. They don't want you so-called Native Americans, you so-called African Americans, and especially you Latino tribes, to know that you're Israelites, man. All right, that's what the Book of Psalms gets into, man. That table, that conspiracy against the people. All right. Today is viewed as taboo and blasphemous in many circles, despite a conclusion never really have been arrived. Right. So these Edomites never got the chance to prove the theory right or wrong, but yet it's been so well hidden and brushed under the rug that they just don't want to talk about it, or it's been just, listen, it's blasphemy. They don't want to hear it, right? Oh, man. But this proves who you are, man. The 10 tribes of Israel, you will see how many authors, scholars, and historians who tried to publish works on this topic were shunned, spurned, and highly advised by the very Catholic Church not to write books on such subject matters because it might be detrimental to their careers. Right, so they was hiding this from the people, man. I'm going to get some scriptures, man. You know, again, if brothers want to look that up, this is Ephraimite8.tripod.com. And it's a lot of good information there, man. Let me get straight to it, because the scriptures could tell it better than anybody else, man. This is second is Ezra 13 and 40. It says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasseh the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. But they took this counsel amongst themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow place of the rivers, and the Most High then showed signs for them, and they held stood the flood till they were passed over. For through the country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half, and the same region is called Azareth. And Azareth is what you would call so-called the Americas today, man. This is the documented proof through the prophet Ezra where the 10 tribes went to, man. A place where never mankind dwelt, man. All right, and it's easy to say, hey, these people how can they be my people when they have different color skin and things of that nature? Well, hey, it speaks about the mixing. All right, actually, before I get this, I'll get this first. It says, Hosea 7 and 8, it says, Ephraim, he have mixed himself among the people. He's a cake not turned. So when you get that cake not turned, you look at a pancake and you don't turn a pancake, what's going to happen? You have one side being brownish because it's cooked, and the other side being palish looking, man. And that's a perfect example of Ephraim, you so-called Puerto Ricans, man. You got the dark-skinned ones, and then you got your real light-looking ones, your batter-colored looking Ephraimites, man. So it's not about skin complexion. It's about, indeed, you being the children of Israel, who you come from through your seed line. This is Matthew 13 and 24. It says, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven, all right, the kingdom of heaven, the scripture, the Lord said, the kingdom of heaven dwelleth in you. Who's that? Israelites, man. Israel. We are the body of the kingdom of heaven, man. All right? Jerusalem is a people before a place. All right? So this is what they're talking about. This is what the Lord is talking about when he's making this parable. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. And while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. And this was happening while the Israelites were sleeping, when they didn't know that they were Israelites, and they were calling themselves by other names such as Tainos and Aztecas and Maya, all right, and Cherokee and all of these nations all these names that the Lord hasn't given them, when they were sleeping, not knowing that they were children of Israel, or partly knowing that they were the children of Israel, right, but following behind other customs and not doing the things that they were supposed to do, when they were falling away from the law, statutes, and commandments, they were asleep. They were in a sleep state, and the enemy came. All right, we can liken that onto the conquistadors. They came and sold. All right, and they came and had sex with the women. All right, and dealt harshly with the men, raped the women, stole land. All right, and this is what the scripture is talking about. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So in these last days, guess what? Israel's springing up, and now the tares are here also. So the servants of the householders came and said unto him, Sir, did not thou sow good seed in thy field? For whence then have it tares? He said unto them, An enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while we gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together into the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in the bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And this is what's happening, man. The Lord is is differentiating the Israelites through the spirit of Yahweh Hashem Yashai, who are the descendants of Israel through the tares, who are the ones that look like Israelites but are indeed the seed of the enemy, man. Who they're the tares, all right, and the wheat is Israel, and this is what we're dealing with today, man. This is why we can't go by, the scriptures say, try the spirit by the spirit. This is why we try the spirit by the spirit. There's going to be a lot of Israelites looking like the enemy, but are Israelites. There's going to be a lot of enemies looking like Israelites, but are the enemy, man. All right, and I just want to touch on that real quick. Another scripture I want to touch on here, just to prove, Ephraim, a little fun fact about Ephraim. Hosea 9:13, it says, Ephraim, as I saw Tyrus, is planted in a pleasant place, but Ephraim shall bring forth his children to the murderer. Is planted in a pleasant place. That pleasant place being the Caribbean islands and whatnot. All them. And then if you go on to, I have something right here. It says, in 1967, the referendum on the state of the island was held in Puerto Rico on 23rd July 1967. Voters were given the choice between being a commonwealth, a statehood, or independence. So Puerto Rico could have had its independence, man, during that time. All right, now there's a lot of stuff going on at that time I'm not going to get into, but it is basically Ephraim could have had their independence at that time, but what did they do? Majority of the voters voted for Commonwealth status with the voter turnout of 65 to 9%. So basically they said, no, we want to be joined on to America, man. And this is why you get America, a so-called Puerto Rico being a 51st state. All right, but it's not really a state. It's just a commonwealth, ownership, if you will, of America, man. That's why when the scripture here says, Ephraim shall bring his children, Hosea 9:13. It says, Ephraim shall bring his children to the murderer, and this is what it is. Because Ephraim is once wanted to dwell with America, wanted to be part of America, wanted to have a piece of that so-called American, or that Babylonian doctrine, man. All right? I mean, I didn't want this to go too long. I just want to touch on this real quick. Couple fun facts. So with that, I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yashai, Ba'ashem Makak, Dash, Shalom.